Hello, children. Welcome to online learning. I hope you all are safe at home and doing your studies well. Today, I am going to explain the poem The Cold Within. This presentation is for Standard 9th, subject English Literature, and today's topic is The Cold Within poem written by James Patrick Kenny. About the poet. The Cold Within was written in the 1960s by an American poet known as James Patrick Kenny. It has appeared in countless church bulletins, websites, and teaching seminars, as well as magazines and newspapers. His other popular works are A Better World, a poem, A Glimpse of Pioneer Ways, and Gone Camping. According to the poet's widow, he submitted the poem first to the Saturday Evening Post, but it was rejected as it was too controversial for the time. Kenny sent it later to Ligorian. Ligorian is a Catholic magazine which was the first commercial publication to print it. So, The Cold Within was first printed in a Catholic magazine known as Ligorian. As many students they don't have book with them, so let's go through the text. The Cold Within. 6 humans trapped by happenstance in bleak and bitter cold. Each one possessed a stick of wood, or so the story is told. Their dying fire in need of logs. The first man held his back, for of the faces round the fire he noticed one was black. The next man, looking across the way, saw one not of his church, and could not bring himself to give the fire his stick of birch. The third one sat in tattered clothes. He gave his coat a hitch. Why should his log be put to use to warm the idle rich? The rich man just sat back and thought of the wealth he had in store, and how to keep what he had earned from the lazy, shiftless poor. The black man's face bespoke revenge, as the fire passed from his sight. For all he saw in his stick of wood was a chance to spite the white. The last man of this forlorn group did not accept for gain, giving only to those who gave, was how he played the game. Their logs held tight in death's still hands was proof of human sin. They did not die from the cold without, they died from the cold within. Now let's start with the explanation of the poem. First stanza. 6 humans trapped by happenstance in bleak and bitter cold. Each one possessed a stick of wood, or so the story is told. Here the poet recounts a tale. A tale means a story. He has heard of 6 persons caught together in the grip of a severe winter. Each of them probably had a single stick of wood. Note the poet's use of the word humans. He wants to draw attention to the gathering as specific individuals rather than as a collective group. They were trapped by happenstance, implying no escape from a situation created by chance. Here, adjectives like dark and bitter, describing the cold, add to the ominous feeling. So, in the first stanza, the poet wants to say that 6 humans were trapped by chance in a bleak and bitter cold, and all the 6 individuals, they had a stick of wood in their hand, and there was a fire in front of them. Second stanza. Their dying fire in need of logs, the first man held his back, for of the faces round the fire he noticed one was black. The second stanza tells us that the fire was dying. The group's prospects do not look good. The fire offers a chance for salvation if each person would use their respective logs to feed the fire. The dying fire is a silent appeal to the group to help themselves by helping each other. The next verses reveal how the situation unfolds. We find that the first person withheld his log from the fire only because it would benefit a black person. This is racism, where there is discrimination because of a person's race. The man will not even warm himself if someone he looks down upon, simply because of skin color. So, in this paragraph, the poet is talking about racism. The first man in the group saw that there is another person in the group whose skin color is black. So, this first person is not willing to give his log of wood to the fire just because it will benefit the black person in the group. So, this is racism based on skin color. So, this first person is willing to die, but he is not willing to share his log of wood. So, Kenny is showing the difference between people on the basis of races, different races. Third stanza. The next man looking across the way saw one not of his church and could not bring himself to give the fire his stick of birch. Now we move on with the story which the poem is telling. The second person looked across the fire and saw someone who he knew did not share his religious ideology, and just because of that, he cannot bear to give up his log of wood to the fire. This is bigotry, which speaks of intolerance to a person because they do not share the same opinions or ideas. Bigotry means narrow mindedly devoted to their own ideas and intolerant about others' religion. So, in this paragraph, the poet wants to say that here a person saw that there was another person in the group who was not of his religion. So, just because of religious differences, he did not give his log of wood to the fire that was dying. So here the poet shows religious differences in human beings. Stanza 4. The third one sat in tattered clothes. He gave his coat a hitch. Why should his log be put to use to warm the idle rich? Now the focus shifts. Here is a person who seems poor. His tattered means old and torn. So his old and torn clothes in the cold weather hint at his poverty. He perhaps felt the cold more than the others, as we notice that he gave his coat a hitch. Hitch means adjusting his coat closer to his body to give him warmth from the inadequate clothing. It means his clothings are not proper. So he's trying to keep his coat very close to his body to keep himself warm from the bitter cold. But here too is a dead end. Means this poor person is also not willing to give his log of wood to the fire. In this paragraph, we see that he is a victim of classism or discrimination based on social or economic class, considering those favorably placed than him to be idle. He is defensive, and in his eyes, the rich do not deserve his meager ration, and he will not part with his stick. So, in the fourth paragraph, the poet wants to tell us the difference in the society between a poor and a rich. Here in this group, there is a poor man who is not willing to give his log of wood to the fire because he noticed that there is a person in the group who is rich. So he is not willing to give the log to the dying fire. In this paragraph, the poet is telling us the huge difference between the poor and the rich in this society. This is also called classism. The rich man just sat back and thought of the wealth he had in store and how to keep what he had earned from the lazy, shiftless poor. Here, the poet says that while the poor man refused to help this ideal rich, the latter, means the rich, is not really bothered as he is busy calculating as to how to keep what he had earned from the lazy, shiftless poor. By what he had earned, the poet is actually referring to the log that he has with him. Thus, he showed his greed and stinginess. Stinginess means lack of generosity. So, in this paragraph, the poet wants to convey the message that the rich man is not bothered at all. He wants to keep his wealth in store. Here, the wealth refers to the log of wood. So, the rich man is not willing to share his wood, the piece of wood, because if he shares this log of wood, it will keep the fire burning, and from that fire, the poor will also get benefit. So, the rich man doesn't want to give his log of wood to help the poor. The black man's face bespoke revenge. as the fire passed from his sight. For all he saw in his stick of wood was a chance to spite the white. Even the victim becomes an abuser here. We know the black persons had experienced racism. Revenge for the atrocities he had faced from the white people was the only thing on his mind. Now one wonders, means we are surprised, if he had already resigned himself to dying. He saw the fire pass from his sight. He realized that the fire was fast getting spent. Fast getting spent means about to extinguish. But the spark of human kindness had died in him, and he chose to let the group's fire die. He would perish, but he would take the others he hated down with him as well. Atrocities means cruelty. So, in this paragraph, the poet wants to say that the black man wants to take revenge against the white. He saw that the fire was about to extinguish, and he realized that if he will not give his log of wood to the fire will die, and all of them will also die along with the fire. But he decided not to give the piece of wood to the fire. He decided that he will die as well as the others with him will also die. So this shows racism. Now we come to the seventh stanza. The last man of this forlorn group did not except for gain, giving only to those who gave was how he played the game. This second last stanza introduces the last man of the group who, as the line, did not except for gain, suggests that he is a businessman. As such, he will not spend his resources without making sure that he has gained something in return. He was ready to give only to those who gave, whereas the line was how he played the game suggests that each individual character of this story took the only chance of saving their life as a game in which they are to defeat their enemies even at the cost of their lives. It's important to win and make sure that the opponent suffers rather than save his own life. Now we come to the last stanza of the poem. Their logs held tight in death's still hands was proof of human sin. They did not die from the cold without, they died from the cold within. We witness the grim result of the group's rigidity of spirit. Death comes, and it is personified here with the stilled hands. Each individual became their own agent of death, their hands frozen stiff with their refusal to act. The fact that each of them still possessed their firewood when they died suggests the twisted motives in retaining their firewood. This proves enough of sin. The final lines abound with irony. We realize that it was not the cold weather outside that really killed the group. After all, it was the cold in their hearts, the lack of human spirit, the cold within that killed them. Symbols used in the poem. The symbols used in the poem are self explanatory. Logs of wood suggest sin. If the logs are held back, as indeed they are, it means holding on to the sins even beyond death. The cold within is a metaphor for lack of warmth, hard heartedness, self centeredness, and inability to reach out others. Rhyme. Each stanza has 4 lines and uses the rhyme scheme ABCD, which is an easy read. This rhyme helps the rhythm to be fast, as it is essential in storytelling. The fast rhythm is in line with the theme of the poem, how fast greed, intolerance, and arrogance can ruin you. Figures of speech, poetic devices. Kenny's poem The Cold Within is rich in its use of poetic devices or figures of speech. First one, alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of similar consonant sounds at the beginning of adjacent words. Example, in bleak and bitter cold. The repetition of the alphabet B in bleak and bitter is an example of alliteration here. Second one, metaphor. Metaphor is an indirect and implied comparison of two different things where there is a point of similarity. Example, giving only to those who gave was how he played the game. In the above lines, human life is compared to a game. The last man would give something to one who could give him something in return. This is how he played the game of life. The comparison of life to a game is a metaphor. Third one, metonymy. A metonymy is a word or phrase used to mean something closely associated to it. Example, saw one not of his church. Here, the word church represents religious faith. The second man saw that a man present there was not sharing his religious beliefs. So, it can be classified as a metonymy. The theme of the poem, The Cold Within. The cold within refers to the lack of feelings because of hatred for others, which is nothing short of a cardinal sin. Many of us develop this coldness in our hearts out of some prejudice. This prejudice may relate to race, color, caste, region, or religion. It makes us mean, stingy, selfish, greedy, and unkind. In the poem The Cold Within, 6 men trapped together in extreme cold somewhere perish because of the one or the other prejudice. The coldness in their hearts rather than the coldness outdoor proves fatal to them. This group of 6 men is near the fire, which is dying fast. Each one knows that it is only the fire that can make them survive. Each has a stick of wood which can keep the fire burning. Ironically, no one is willing to give up his stick for one or the other reason. The result is their death by cold, the cold within. This is the major theme of the poem. The idea is that the coldness in man's heart is a kind of death. Glossary, stanza-wise word meaning. First stanza. Trapped means caught in a difficult situation of no escape. Happen tense. Chance or prearranged and not accidental. Possessed, to have or to have ownership of something. Stick of wood, small log of wood. Second stanza. Held back, did not give up. Black, non-white people. Third stanza. Not of his church, person of different religion. Bring himself to give, force himself to give something. Fourth stanza. Tattered clothes, rags. Give his coat a hitch, tightened his coat, symbolic of his meanness. Idle rich, the rich who do not work hard but thrive on the labor of the poor. Fifth stanza. Lazy, one who shirks work. Shiftless, without ambition to succeed in life. Sixth stanza. Bespoke, showed. Spite, hatred. Seventh stanza. Forlorn, lonely. Not, nothing. Gain, profit. Last stanza. Cold without, the cold out of doors. Cold within, lack of human feelings like selflessness, kindness, etc. for others. Children, now it is assignment time. First assignment is extract based, taken from the poem. 6 humans trapped till one was black. Who are the people referred to in the above extract? Why do they need logs? State how the extract is connected with the theme of the poem. What does the first person hold back and why? What character traits would you associate with the first one and the next man, and why? Second extract. The third one sat till chance to spite the white. What is meant by tattered clothes? What does this expression symbolize? Why does the third one gives his coat a hitch? The third one doesn't want to use his log to warm the rich. Why? What prejudice the black man has and for whom? What thoughts preoccupy the rich man's mind? What does it say about him? Third question. The last man of this forlorn till from the cold within. Explain the phrase forlorn group. Which figure of speech is used here? What game is the poet referring to while mentioning the last man of the group? What proof of human sin is being referred to here? Explain. The poet says that the characters die from the cold within. What does he mean? Now explain few terms. Explain: to warm the idle rich. He gave his coat a hitch. Describe the nature of the last man in the group. What do you mean by the cold within? How it is responsible for the death. Thank you for your patience. This presentation was prepared by Sonu Nanda.